Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the last member who spoke on this bill asked some very interesting questions, and I have some answers for him. His first question was, how are we going to fund what we want to do? And keeping in mind, the universal benefit is something that we have discounted. But let me give the member one idea. Now, this is transformable. This is transformative. It may be quite hard for the member to get his head around, but how about this one? Everyone pay their fair share of tax. Now, how about that? Pay your fair share. Now, imagine this. Imagine that. You know, we have the New Zealand Herald, a journalist who, I'm not dismissing the journalist. Matt Nippert is a very good journalist, but a journalist, not a member of the IRD, not a tax expert, a journalist has uncovered a tax rorts to the tune of about $500 million. This is just the top 20 companies, a journalist. But wait, there's more. Down the other end of the scale, the real experts say that we could be missing out on $7.1 billion a year to our tax base due to these large multinationals avoiding and evading tax. Now that is a transformative idea. Everyone pay their fair share. And the good thing about the New Zealand tax system, Mr. Speaker, is that we don't want people to pay more than their fair share. We're not asking them to hand over all their profits. All we're asking them to do is pay their fair share. And if it's company tax, it's only 28%. It's not a whole lot of money. They're still left with a whole lot of money in their back pocket. They can repatriate back to the States. But the interesting thing, Mr. Speaker, is the National Revenue Minister has come out and said, there's no problem here. We have not got a problem in New Zealand. Now, the amazing thing about this is the Obama administration tax officials who know a little bit about tax, trust me, I'm from the IRS, they say there's a big problem. In fact, President Obama himself called these companies traitors. David Cameron has come out and said, we are going to change the law because this is wrong. Even the Prime Minister has come out and said this is morally wrong, but the Revenue Minister said there's no problem. Don't worry about it, nothing to see here. Well, I don't know what planet the Revenue Minister is on when we are $7.1 billion down on what we should be because companies are engaged in aggressive tax planning that sees them transfer all their profits offshore and don't pay any tax in New Zealand. Now, Mr. Scott, I think that's pretty transformative, and I think it's a pretty good idea too. See, the thing that gets to me is when national ministers and national members stand up and they defend these large multinationals at the expense of hard-working middle New Zealanders who actually pay their tax. You know something's wrong. You know they're a little bit out of touch. And I would guess, now I'm not going to put my house in it, but I would guess that if I went into Mr. Scott's electorate and I walked down the main street of Masterton and I said to these middle New Zealand families, did you pay your tax? Absolutely. In fact, they would be affronted with any suggestion that they didn't pay their tax. And if I said to them, do you think it's right that these large multinationals are paying no tax? I guarantee 95% of people who I interviewed down the main street of Marsden would say it's about fairness. And what I argue is what the multinationals are doing at this point in time to the New Zealand tax base simply is not fair. Yes, Mr. Woodhouse, we do have a problem. It is recognised by every single OECD country that we have a problem. Where the difficulty is the solution. But what we think we must do is at least quantify the problem. At least get a panel of experts in, not just one, Mr. Shewan. Let's get a panel of experts in to understand the extent of the problem. And then we know how much we should be investing in this. Now, I can vouch that the IRD has a number of incredibly capable people in its ranks. They have some of the finest tax experts, I believe, in the world. In fact, I know that the IRD is co-opting some of its staff to help with the OECD. And I'll tell you what I know about the IRD officials that appear in front of our committee. They are passionate about what they do, but they're also passionate about New Zealand. And they also understand that the integrity of the tax system is fundamental to a sound economy. I believe that if the minister said to his officials in a public way, we have a problem here, they'd go, yes, Minister, we know that. We've been telling you this for a while. If he said to them, can you go away and quantify the value or the extent of the problem we have here, they would take to it like, I was going to say robber's dog, it's probably not the right description for the IRD. But what I am saying is everyone recognises this is a problem except the Revenue Minister. And then, Mr Speaker, within about 2 weeks, we have this overseas trust issue. Now, I believe that a country's brand, in fact, any organiser, any brand, is based around how people perceive that brand. Now, Mr Key and Mr Woodhouse may say, it's not a tax haven. We're not operating any sort of tax schemes. But, Mr Speaker, when the international press come out and say, if it smells like a rat, if it looks like a rat, if it tastes like a rat, then it's probably a rat. And I think, Mr Speaker, the way that the Prime Minister should have handled this, if he didn't know already, and the suggestion that he had been warned because articles were published in the MBR detailing exactly how this worked, if the Prime Minister had come out and said, wow, we did not understand the extent of this problem, I am going to work day and night to close this down, because for me, the integrity of our country, the integrity of our brand and the integrity of our tax system is paramount. But instead, what the Prime Minister did is try to defend multinational organisations and those who are attempting to avoid tax. And the thing about that is the vast majority of New Zealanders, middle New Zealand, that's right, pay their tax. In fact, if any part of middle New Zealand works to avoid their tax, the IRD comes down on them like a ton of bricks. And yet when a multinational organisation avoids their tax, I'm not saying evades, I'm saying avoids their tax, or overseas dictators or or arms dealers or whoever, because we don't know, or oligarchs seek to avoid paying tax, the Prime Minister defends them. Now, my personal view is the Prime Minister has actually lost touch with what New Zealanders, what middle New Zealand cares about. Middle New Zealand cares about fairness. You know, the interesting thing, I've got 4 children, and almost the first concept that children learn is fair. And those of you with children will know where I'm coming from. You know, when my little son is aggrieved by his sister, he comes up and says, Dad, this isn't fair. It's just not fair. This is the first concept, fairness, it's the first concept that children learn. And I think it's what makes New Zealand such an egalitarian, what used to be such an egalitarian society, because we value fairness, because we expect everyone to do their fair share and pay their fair share. And when the Prime Minister and his ministers stand up and they put the interests of multinational companies and they put the interests of overseas oligarchs before the interests of middle New Zealand, then I think we have a problem. I think we have a government that has turned arrogant, and I think we have a Prime Minister that has lost touch with what New Zealanders really value. And that, Mr Speaker,
anyway, back to the bill.
Fairness. Thank you very much.
Mr Speaker.